are going to go into some updates from EPA and DEQ, starting with Caleb Schaefer with EPA.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you and virtually, and thanks for spending your time here tonight. I think I speak for everyone. It was just a fascinating presentation. I learned a lot, and want to just thank Tim again for just a very informative and interesting presentation. In terms of updates from EPA, I just have one main update, and we did want to share that EPA this last month received the programmatic biological opinion. We had been consulting with the NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration's National Marine Fisheries Service, also known as NIMFS. And we submitted a biological assessment. Hunter on the call tonight was the lead on that effort and instrumental in getting the biological opinion through to the finish line. But we have achieved that milestone, and we are now currently reviewing the document that NIMPS has provided, and we have a requirement to respond to it. So we will respond to it accordingly. And just very briefly, what this document is, this document really, it's a statutory requirement for us to do the cleanup and it ensures that the cleanup will not negatively impact endangered species. So it includes things like appropriate measures that can be done during the cleanup to avoid or minimize or offset those impacts, including things like mitigation. I know that's a topic that's been discussed in these meetings. And it's really focused on impacts the cleanup has to essential fish habitat, so those endangered species. And so we are happy to have kind of reached this milestone to prepare ourselves to apply these measures during the actual cleanup when it does start. So a big announcement. It was the actual document can be reviewed in full, and we provided a link for folks in the listserv that we sent out. If you didn't get that, certainly please reach out. We can add you to that listserv.
In the chat too.
Great, thank you, Laura. And that's really the main update from EPA that I have for this evening. I'll turn it back over to you, Danny.
Caleb, what species are considered endangered in the lower Willamette?
So yeah, Hunter, help me out here.
Yeah. It's a bunch of salmon and steelhead. That's kind of the gist of it. We also evaluated even southern resident killer whales in the analysis. So that's kind of the gist of it. There's 16 species in the biological opinion that we consulted on. Yeah.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Has anyone ever seen a killer whale in the Willamette?
And I don't think so. Well, but the main idea is behind that is, do we, are the prey of the southern resident killer whale, is there contamination in the prey that then is affecting the killer whale themselves? And so it was sort of an evaluation of making sure that the cleanup wouldn't impact something so far afield like that. And I think that was pretty kind of a long shot, but we're very conservative in these analysis, and so that's how we did.
Contaminated salmon from the Willamette would become feed off the coast. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Emil, thank you.
We also
Emil
have the question.
Sorry, I'll just say Emil dropped the species list in the chat. Thanks, Emil.
Oh, great. We got the question too of whether PRPs will be responding to the biological opinion in their ongoing remedial designs. And that's, it's the obligation of the federal agency to consult and submit a biological assessment. to NOAA, and that's what we did, and they issue the biological opinion. So PRPs aren't necessarily responding to that biological opinion, and we as the consulting agency are responding. However, that biological opinion and those recommendations will be incorporated into the designs.
Any other questions regarding Caleb's update? Or any other notes or updates from EPA folks?
Hey, everyone. I just want to mention one other thing, and I can let Caleb if you want to say anything else. Just that this was in the listserv announcement too. But for the Cathedral Park project area, there was a working group that we'd had for a while, and it hasn't met for also quite a while because there haven't been a lot of updates. But Josie Clark, our EPA remedial project manager who's leading that area, has some good updates to share. And also there's going to be some additional sampling in that area, starting most likely later in June, probably. So we're going to be having another Cathedral Park project area working group soon. That's still figuring out the date. So if you're interested in joining that, I'll put my email, if you don't have it, and phone number, cell phone. You can text me or call me in the chat. But just wanted to mention that. And if Hunter and Caleb want to say anything else about that, please feel free. But just wanted to mention that because that's an important area and important work going on. So thanks.
Chicken rocking.
Great. Thank you for that update, Laura, and also thanks for the fun facts in the chat about the 1931 whale sighting. Very interesting. With that, we are going to go over to Michael Locke for some updates from DEQ.
Hi, good evening, everyone. For DEQ's updates, we don't have much in the way in terms of the uplands for the Portland Harbor Superfund site area, but I have some updates to share about some adjacent areas. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about McCormick and Baxter, which that site is positioned essentially in between University of Portland and their Franz River campus area and the Willamette Cove site, which Metro is redeveloping into a nature park. So in May, so yeah, last month, we had a community meeting, a virtual community meeting, to talk about updates about the site, get some folks up to speed as to kind of the history of the site and the cleanup remedy and such. But the main meat of that was to share more information about Portland Botanical Gardens, which is a nonprofit group that has applied or submitted a proposal to us via prospective purchaser agreement to purchase and redevelop the property. This application is still under review. And essentially, what that means is in order to get a prospective purchaser agreement with us, you have to provide a substantial public benefit and you must be able to maintain the cleanup remedy that was in place. And in return, you get a liability protection. So we had about 100 people that registered for this meeting, which was great. Nearly 70 attended, and folks got to hear from Portland Botanical Gardens themselves about what their vision is for the site, and there was a really good Q&A session. So for anybody that was on this meeting that was there, thank you very much for your participation and really, really good questions. We still have a community survey out there. I've been kind of sending this out over and over. But this is something that will be really helpful to DEQ to know what are the community's thoughts, concerns, questions, etc., about the site before we go into more official negotiations for a PPA. We are in constant conversations with Portland Botanical Gardens, but when it comes to negotiating that PPA, that's going to be coming up pretty soon here. So if you or folks in your networks want to participate and share that feedback, we really, really want to hear that. And I'm going to put a link in the chat here to that survey. And just to be real frank, I don't have much or any really of a marketing budget to pump this survey out. Um, I don't have the money to send mailers out to everybody in North Portland. So I'm really relying on community groups, neighborhood groups to try to get this word out so that we can reach as many people as possible to collect that feedback and those questions so that we could front load that before so that we were prepared to go into these negotiations so that if we get to a point where we're ready to present a draft PPA to the community for an official public comment period, we can have that feedback incorporated into that. So this is really important. We're really trying to front load that community feedback before an official public comment period. There will be future community meetings. So when we have more substantial updates to share, we're going to share that among the various groups and individuals that have been interested. And we will absolutely have another community meeting if we come to the point where we have a draft PPA to put out on public comment. Let's see, I saw a question come in. Yes, yeah, the survey, I'll throw that link in the chat after I'm done speaking. Other things, so regarding Cathedral Park, I heard Laura talking a little bit about that. Laura, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe what you were talking about was more of the in-water cleanup. I'm going to talk a little bit about the
Right.
uplands cleanup. So we have an upland cleanup project that we're preparing for. We're dubbing that the North Bradford Street Cleanup Project. And that's to address elevated levels of soil contamination in and around the railroad adjacent to Cathedral Park. And we received a draft cleanup work plan from the responsible party, which is Peninsula Ironworks. But we evaluated that, provided some feedback, and right now we're just in conversations about providing feedback, hearing back from them, and we're working with them to come together to have a good draft work plan that will be sufficient to protecting human health and the environment. And when we have a more substantial plan ready to present to the community, we're going to share that with folks and we're going to plan a community meeting. I don't have specifics in the way of that timing. We're really trying to get through this as quickly as possible. And this is kind of one of the first substantial milestones that we have. Other areas that I know, another area that folks are interested in here, I know it's not the Portland Harbor or really adjacent, but I want to talk a little bit about the Columbia Slough. Later this summer, starting probably around in late July, we're going to start implementing a cleanup project in the Columbia Slough in a channel south of the Moore and Wright Islands, roughly a 1,500 long portion of that. The contractor mobilization will begin roughly mid-July with the in-water work starting in late July. When that in-water work starts, that impacted area, that's going to be closed to the public. Will be closed to recreational and other activities. And we anticipate that work to be completed around mid-September. And then after that, bank restoration and planting will take about another 6 weeks to roughly the end of October. But at that point, that impacted area of the Columbia Slough should be reopened. Still finalizing some details there, and more specifics will be available pretty soon. And the one last thing for me to report, this is not a DEQ thing, but I think this is something that folks should be aware of. There is an organization called the Regional Disaster Preparedness Organization, which is essentially a consortium consisting of a bunch of different partners, especially local government organizations and other organizations and companies that are interested in regional disaster preparedness. There's going to be a boat tour of the Portland Harbor site, which will consist of a conversation about the CEI Hub and DEQ Seismic Stability Program and their progress. That will be taking place later this month on the 20th. That audience will probably be a mix of city and county elected officials and other various department staff in those organizations, and DEQ will be there as well to talk more about our seismic stability program. But that will essentially be a meeting, an event to get a lot of different parties there to really see what's going on in the Portland Harbor and to learn more about the various impacted areas in the Superfund site, as well as learning more about the CEI Hub. So for folks here on the call that talk to these different groups, especially local governments, just a heads up that that's happening, and maybe that could be a point of conversation that you might want to bring up to them and hear more about what they take away from that. Unfortunately, I won't be there. I'll be on vacation, but I wish I was there. That CEI Hub, I'm looking at questions now on the chat. I don't believe that CEI Hub meeting, I don't think that's open to the public thing. I think that's more so for the partners that are officially a part of that organization. I could drop a link to their website, which will have contact information. So Emil, if you or other groups might be interested in raising your hand to see if you can get on that tour. Hopefully they'll have contact information there. Let's see. I'm looking at some other questions. Laura, I see this question about PCBs to be cleaned up and being monitored and cleaned up. I'm assuming you're talking about the Columbia Slough cleanup.
Yes, Columbia Slough. The Columbia Slough remediation, yeah.
I know there's going to be monitoring that's going to be happening during the cleanup. The exact specifics, I don't have that information offhand. Be happy to follow up. Sarah, I don't know if you might have further information on that. I know that's not your project, but is there anything that you might want to add to that?
I don't have any more info than you do. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, happy to forward that question to our project team, Laura, and then pass that back to the team here that manages us for some follow-up communication.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Michael,
Yeah.
I've got two questions. The first, Willamette Cove. Since the decision's been made to lay back the riverbank considerably, when they sampled the upland, my understanding is they only sampled to a depth of about 3 feet. So obviously laying back 10 or 12 feet of riverbank's going to expose a lot of unsampled territory. Who takes responsibility for that, EPA or DEQ?
Sarah, I know you're kind of more involved in that, the upland sampling and such. Is there anything that you might be able to share about that?
Yeah, definitely. And I see Kyle also just came off mute with the city of Portland. But the riverbank portion and that layback is all being conducted under EPA oversight by the In-Water Willamette Cove Group. And so while you are correct that the 3 feet was what was characterized as part of DEQ's work in cleaning up the upland portion of the Willamette Cove site, there is this parallel project through the in-water process that is looking at the contaminant levels within the bank itself as part of the in-water remedial design.
Okay,
Yep, and I'll quickly just add at the end of that, Sarah covered most of it. We did go out and do some of that sampling, Doug. We did this sampling a few months ago. And we just got some results back. And we're looking over those now.
let us know.
We will.
So second question on McCormick and Baxter negotiations. For a public service group, the maintenance cost, 150,000 a year, is pretty prohibitive. Has there been any discussion of setting up an independent fund for DEQ to continue doing that?
We're talking to them about that. So that's something for us to really hammer out with negotiations, but that's definitely something that is that's top of mind. But nevertheless, no matter what happens with the site, whether it's Portland Botanical Gardens or elsewhere, yeah, that ongoing maintenance, operations maintenance of the remedial measures, that has to be taken care of. But yeah, that's absolutely something that we're talking to them now about, and yeah, we'll be able to have further details later. But right now, that's still kind of an in progress conversation.
Good to know it's being considered anyway. Thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Great. Any other questions for Michael? Great. Well, thank you, Michael. And also thank you, Caleb, for those great updates.